Hello, my name is Alana. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In a little corner of YouTube in which we talk about books. More specifically, we review books. Okay, so as you can tell by this title, we are going to be talking about Game of Thrones, the first book, which I finally reread. It's been 9 years since I read it the first time, and I wanted to revisit it. Before I jump into the review, you can see I'm sitting by my clothes. If you go back through my videos, you can see like every 4 videos I'm wearing the same thing because I sit down and record 4 to 5 videos at once because that's just currently what my time allows. I just find it easier to do that way. But you can see I've got a new stack of books behind me because I'm recording this on the very last day of March. So we're heading into April. This is a sneak peek of my April and May reading. So for April, and no, I'm recording this on April 1st. My bad. I've got Within a Budding Grove by Marcel Proust. Buddy reading that with a friend. We read Swine's Way together last year. Check out 19 by Louise Clare Bennett. The Priory by Dorothy Whipple, which is a reread for me. I'm so excited to reread this book and properly annotate it and properly review it. Ducks Newburyport. I started this the last week of March. I'm only about 40 something pages in. I'm listening to this via audio and annotating it as I go. I have no opinions about this book yet. I'm, again, 40 pages in. I could see this being something I'm going to enjoy or something that's going to get on my nerves. That's where I'm teetering. But I think the audiobook is helping. I could imagine if I were reading this, I might get annoyed. Thoughts pending. And then I have Writers and Lovers by Lily King that I'll be tackling in April. This is what I'm playing around with in May. Back to some Iris Murdoch. I haven't read her since 2021, and I've been missing her. So we're going to read The Sandcastle by Iris Murdoch. Frost in May by Antonia White. Obviously, Frost in May. The title was appropriate for the month of May, and it's been sitting on my shelf for 3 years, so it's time to get to it. My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. Notes from Underground by one of my favorites, authors, period, Dostoevsky. And then I'm going to lighten it up in May. I've got People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry and The Rosie Project by Simpson. I hope I pronounced his last name right. One thing you are going to start, I made a post about this on Instagram about how I read some heavy stuff. I like heavy, dense literature, but sometimes I need to lighten it up and give my brain a break. So you're going to be seeing rotations of like rom-coms and stuff in there just because I need a palate cleanser. But that doesn't mean I'm still not going to like analyze them to oblivion because I can't. Let's hop into Game of Thrones. Some secrets are safer kept hidden. Some secrets are too dangerous to share, even with those you love and trust. Game of Thrones is iconic by George.R.R. Martin. If you didn't know they were books, you knew it's a TV show. If you've known they were books for a while, then you were excited for the TV show, whatever. There's also this drama about when is Martin ever going to finish? Is he going to finish? We shall see. But I have only seen the first season of Game of Thrones and then just like ditched it. I went into a massive reading slump while starting to read these, which is why I'm going to reread them. I've only read the first 2, started the 3rd, and just hit a brick wall. So rereading this was in a way like reading this for the first time for me, even though I knew what to expect. So, and if you've never read Game of Thrones, I feel like Game of Thrones, the books in particular, has this reputation for being complicated. It's really not a complicated story. Yes, you have different houses / families, but G.R.R. Tolkien. George Martin writes this in a way that's easy to follow. So we've got Game of Thrones' fantastical world where summers can last for decades, but so can the winters. The series starts when summer is finally beginning to wane, and the pending winter is foreshadowed to be a harsh one, if not one of the harshest. There is talk of strange creatures lurking in the north. I almost used a Lord of the Rings quote. There's talk of strange folk abroad, especially lurking in the north. And these creatures are said to have died long ago, but had they really? And this first book in particular, we focused on the Stuarts. This is not English history. Actually, people hypothesize that Martin used the War of the Roses as loose inspiration for Game of Thrones. But the Stark family, not the Stuarts, the Stark family is a family that resides in the north. So this is really the main family that we're focusing on in this narrative. And they're a family that's used to the cold. Even though it's summer, there's still snow in the north, but it's nowhere near as bad as what is finna happen. And this family gets pulled in various directions. It becomes a tale of murder, politics, intrigue, and betrayal, which that makes a good story. And I like I like drama in my fiction. Okay. And remember, I can't help myself, but winter is coming. As a personal lover of winter, I'm feeling it. I love winter. I love snow. I love ice. Summer can get thrown away. I said what I said. I don't think that this book requires a long, drawn-out review. It's really a fun narrative, and each chapter is told from the perspective of a different character. So to kind of break those characters down, and it changes with each book, depending on who's dead, who died, who finna die. Okay. So in this first book, we have Eddard Stark, who is the Lord of Winterfell, who unwillingly leaves his home and his family to go to King's Landing in service of the king. The king is his friend. They've known each other for a hot minute, but he's going to inevitably be drawn into this world of politics, which he really doesn't want to engage in. And in doing so, he uncovers a very dangerous and deadly secret. ... Then we have Jon Snow, who is Eddard's bastard son. He is 14 at the beginning of this narrative. And because he is, an out of wedlock child, he was born right, is conceived and born really right at the beginning of his father's marriage. So he decides to take the black and join the Night Watch. And the Night Watch, in a nutshell, is a group of men who, there's a wall in the north. They guard the wall and they monitor the surrounding areas to keep this area safe. But with talk of strange folk abroad, stuff goes a little dodgy. But Jon really doesn't have any other choice. He can't really inherit. He's a bastard child. So the best thing that he can do is take the black. That was thunder. We've had odd weather. It's the temperatures, side note, temperatures thinking of winter is coming. Like, we've had some mild weather, but the temperature is going to drop, and then we're going to shoot back up to like 80 degrees. We got to talk about Bran. He is the second youngest Stark son, who was grievously injured because he knows too much. He finds out too much. So then we have Catelyn, who's Eddard's wife, who seeks revenge for her son's injury, trying to figure out who caused her son this harm. We have Arya, who's the youngest Stark daughter. She's a tomboy. She doesn't like sewing and wearing frilly dresses and learning to dance and all that stuff. She just wants to learn how to wield a sword. So she gets on with her brothers way more than she gets on with her sister, Sansa. Sansa is the eldest Stark daughter. Sansa believes way too much in the valiant tales of knights and ladies. She takes them at face value. But can you help her? She's like 12 years old. She's still believing in like Disney princess fairy tales, right? Where she then has to kind of relearn how she perceives the world as the story goes on, because she does become a lot bit jaded as she's smacked in the face with reality at such a young age in some very tragic ways. We have Tyrion Lannister, my personal favorite. I think he's a personal favorite of a lot of people. He is the brother of the queen. He may be small and misshapen, but he's clear-sighted, with humor and wit for days. He's just my favorite character thus far in this story. And then we have Daenerys, who is the last surviving member of the house of the, how do you pronounce that? Targaryens? We're going to go with that. Who carry the blood of dragons. So in an attempt to regain her family's throne, her twisted brother marries her off to the Dothraki, who's a horse lord, to a strong Dothraki horse lord. And she gains possession of 3 dead dragon's eggs. Okay, so she marries a stud. Let's call a spade a spade. She marries a stud. And her tale, her chapters to me are some of the funnest to read. So those are all of our narrators in this book. So this is a world in which in order to survive, you have to play the game. It's straightforward. The story is really straightforward, but also a straightforward, see how I did that transition? Honest personality is deadly in this world. Eddard his nickname is Ned, so I'm going to call him Ned. Ned in particular has a very difficult time at playing politics. He's bad at it because he's too honest. He is the most straightforward character in this book. Even his wife and his older son, Rob, who does not have a narration in this story. He doesn't have a chapter which we're seeing things from his perspective, or chapters in which we're seeing things from his perspective. His 15, 16-year-old son knows how to play the game better than he does. And by that, it means you know how to omit certain information, highlight certain information, tell half-truths when you need to, or else, you're battling with people's lives here. So Eddard, Ned, he's not good at that at all. And here's just a couple quotes. But some truths did not bear saying, and some lies were necessary. When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or die. There is no middle ground. So we see in this book, and in the future books, I'm guessing, and I know that for the second book that I have read, honesty has a price. And you know that because it's Martin, these characters are going to suffer. If they don't suffer in this book, they're going to suffer in subsequent books. Okay? He likes to kill off the characters that you like the most. You've been warned. It's going to thunderstorm. Atmosphere. Exciting. There is no creature on earth half so terrifying as a truly just man. You were an honest and honorable man, Lord Eddard. Oftentimes I forget that. I have met so few of them in my life. When I see what honesty and honor have won you, I understand why. Autocorrect is a beast. Autocorrect is a beast. So again, I don't think this requires a long drawn out review. I am going to wrap it up here because this is also a narrative that you can't say too much or you're going to spoil most of it. And it's just one of those books where you get in it, you just compulsively read it because you got to find out what shenanigans these characters are going to get up to next or what kind of crazy nonsense is about to happen to them. It's just one of those books that's fun to dive into. It's engaging. It's well written, but it's not overwritten. It's not overly contrived. Again, it's just fun. There's nothing deep about it. And I mean that in a good way. It just is. Again, like I said, I've read Game of Thrones before. This is my second reading. And I liked it in 2014 when I first read it. Hear the rain? We're about to get a thunderstorm. I hope it's not too bad. Anyway. I liked it when I first read it, but I somehow wasn't compelled by it. I just wasn't swept away. I enjoyed it, but again, I was heading into a reading slump. And so a lot of it was fuzzy in my mind. The second one I did read, I don't remember anything about the second book at all. So when I read the second book for sure, I don't know when I'm getting to it. I'll definitely get to it no later than next year. I mean, it's right there. It's going to be like reading it for the first time for me. But having reread it, I was completely hooked. I mean, I zoomed through this book in no time. This particular edition, which is the mass paperback edition, has over 800. just around 800 pages. And I just zoomed through it. I was talking back to the book, I kid you not, out loud. Okay? Particularly with Eddard, because he just does things. I'm like, if you just shut up and act like you don't know anything and just make moves in silence, you wouldn't be in this situation. So yeah, I was definitely talking out loud to him. Tyrion in particular, he made me laugh out loud. He's cheeky. He's got that cheeky, dry humor. He's a smart aleck, and I love it. This is also an atmospheric read. We are introduced to some of the fantastical creatures for the first time that are going to definitely have bigger presences as the series goes on, that I know. Like, we've got the dire wolves. We've got the others who creep me out. Okay? And we just get a glimpse of them. They haven't really... We haven't gotten a full idea yet in this book what the others really are yet. And so I flew through this book. I'm glad I reread it. I became entirely invested. I was hooked. Okay? Couldn't put it down. Couldn't wait to get back to it. And so I'm excited to keep reading this. Again, this was just fun. I feel like this year you're going to see really high ratings from me overall, because I've just been really, really liking what I've been reading. And I think that just goes with the more you read, the more you find out what your taste is. I gave this a 5 out of 5 just because it was that much of a blast. So again, this isn't a deep book. It's not complicated. If maybe you've been apprehensive to read Game of Thrones because you think it's just going to be confusing and you're going to have too many characters and who belongs to who, it's so easy. And there are appendixes that with brief synopsis of what each house is, what each family line is, and with who the characters are. But Martin writes it in such a way it's easy to follow and it's not convoluted. So I can see why people are massive Game of Thrones fans. And again, I'm excited to keep going. I have all 5 books that are currently published in the series. There was some talk of him finally releasing the 6th book this year, but we shall see. This has happened before in the past and he doesn't. But yeah, I gave it a 5 out of 5. This book is just too much fun. And yeah, it's just good classic fantasy. How about that? I'm going to wrap this up. Are you a Game of Thrones fan? How did you feel about the series? If you've read all 5 books that are currently published, how did you feel about the series as you kept reading? Are you hopeful that he will finally finish the series out? If you like Game of Thrones, if you didn't like Game of Thrones, feel free to leave me a comment down below. Sirens. That's the police. Okay. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, leave me a comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and please feel free to follow me on Instagram, where I post everything first. Book reviews, all of that goes first. And I do post on Instagram my monthly TBRs and my reading wrap up, so you can see what I've read in the previous month or whatever. So all of this information is down below. I'm going to sign off. I haven't recorded videos in about a month, so I'm feeling a little rusty. I need to warm up. So if this one seems a little all over the place, I'm warming up. I will see you guys in the next one.